For you, gaming is about escape. When you push the button on the console, switch the PC on, you're switching the real world off and escaping to somewhere else for a while. Recently, the bright primary colors and flat backgrounds of retro games have been your escape. Sure, the graphics are virtually primitive and the plinky-plonk music can be infuriating, but there's something about the simplicity, the fullness of its characters, and the amazing gameplay of those games that really appeals. Until, that is, one of those games full of bright sunshine days suddenly turns dark. Until one of your favorite characters fills the screen, but instead of offering his usual wide smile and mischievous eyes, he instead offers you emptiness, terror, and the dark hollow of empty sockets that leak some awful fluid. The music fades, and the eyeless face glares out, and you realize far too late, you're in his world.
I'm a total Sonic the Hedgehog fan, much like everybody else. I like the newer games, but I don't mind playing the classics. I don't think I've ever played glitchy or hacked games before, though I don't think I want to play any after the experience I had. It started on a nice summer afternoon. I was playing Sonic Unleashed. I really liked how you can explore the towns in it, until I noticed out of my peripheral vision, the mailman had arrived and put something in the post, as usual, and left. I paused my game to go see what I got in the mail. The only thing in the mailbox was a CD case for computers and a note. I took it inside. I looked at the note first and realized it was from my dear friend Kyle. Well, let's just call him that. Whom I hadn't heard from in 2 weeks. I know that because I recognized his handwriting, though what was weird was how it looked. It looked badly written and scratchy, and somewhat difficult to read, as if Kyle was having a hard time writing it down and he did it in a hurry. This is what he wrote. Tom, I can't take it anymore. I had to get rid of this thing somehow before it was too late. And I was hoping you'd do it for me. I can't do it. He's after me. And if you don't destroy the CD, he'll come after you too. He's too fast for me. Please, Tom, destroy this godforsaken disc before he comes after you too. It's too late for me. Destroy the disc, and you'll destroy him. But do it quick, otherwise he'll catch you. Don't even play the game. It's what he wants. Just destroy it. Please. Kyle. Well, that was certainly weird. Even though Kyle is my best friend and I haven't seen him in 2 weeks, I didn't do what he asked me. I didn't think a simple gaming disc would do anything bad to him. After all, it's just a game, right? Boy, was I wrong. Anyway, I looked at the disc, and it looked like any ordinary computer CDR disc, except it had black marker written on it, Sonic.EXE, and it was much unlike Kyle's handwriting, meaning that he must have gotten it from somewhere like a pawn shop or eBay. When I saw Sonic on the writing of the CD, I was actually excited and wanted to play it, since I am a big Sonic fan. I went up to my room and turned on the computer. I put the disc in and installed the game. When the title screen popped up, I noticed that it was the first Sonic game. And I was like, awesome! Because, like I said earlier, I like the classics. The first thing I noticed that was out of place, when I pressed start, there was a split second when I saw the title image turn into something much different, something that I now consider horrifying, before cutting to black. I remember what the image looked like in that split second before the game cut to black. The sky had darkened, the title emblem was rusted and ruined, and the Sega 1991 was now instead Sega 666. And the water turned red, like blood. But the freakiest thing that was in that split-second frame was Sonic. His eyes were pitch black and bleeding, 2 glowing red dots staring right at me, and his smile had stretched wider up to the edge of his face. I was rather disturbed about that image when I saw it, though I figured that it was just a glitch and forgot about it. After it cut to black, it stayed like that for about 10 seconds or so. And then another weird thing popped up. The save file select from Sonic the Hedgehog 3 popped up, and I was like, what the hell? What's this doing in the first Sonic game? Anyway, I noticed something off. The background was the dark, cloudy sky of the bad Stardust Speedway level from Sonic CD. There were only 3 save files. The music was that creepy Caverns of Winter music from Earthbound, and it was only extended and seemed to have been in reverse. And the image for the save file, where you'd see a preview of the level you were on, was just red static for all 3 files. What freaked me out more was the character select. It showed only Miles Tails per hour, Knuckles the Echidna, and, to my surprise, Dr. Ivo Robotnik. Now I was sure something was up. I mean, how can you play as Robotnik in a classic Sonic game, for crying out loud? Then I realized this wasn't a glitchy game. It was a hacked game. Yeah, it looked hacked. It was creepy, but as a smart gamer, I was not scared. Or at least I tried not to be. I told myself this was just a hacked game. There's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, shaking off the creeped out feeling, I picked File 1 and chose Tails. And when I selected and got started, the game froze for about 5 seconds, and I heard a creepy, pixelated laugh that sounded an awful lot like that Kefka guy from Final Fantasy before cutting to black. The screen stayed black for about 10 seconds or so. Then it showed the typical level title thing, except the simplistic shapes were different shades of red, and the text only showed Hill, Act 1. The screen faded in, and the level title vanished, revealing Tails in the Green Hill Zone from Sonic the Hedgehog 1. The music was different, though. It sounded like a peaceful melody in reverse. Anyway, I started playing and had Tails start running as you would do in any of the classic Sonic games. What was odd was that Tails was running along the level. There was nothing but flat ground and a few trees for 5 minutes. That's when the peaceful music started to lower down into slow, deep tones. Very slowly, as I kept going. I suddenly stopped and saw something. It was one of the small animals lying dead on the ground, bleeding. That moment was when the music started to slow down. Tails had a shocked and saddened look on his face that I never saw him have before. So I had to move him along, and he kept that worried look on his face. As he kept moving, I saw more dead animals, and Tails moved past them, looking more and more worried as the music lowers and he moves past corpses of dead animals. I was shocked to see how they all died. They looked like somebody killed them in rather gruesome ways. A squirrel was hanging on a tree with what appeared to be his entrails hanging out. A bunny had all 4 of its limbs torn off, and a duck had its eyes gouged out and its throat slit. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw this massacre, and apparently so did Tails. After a few seconds, there were no more animals. The music seemed to have stopped. I still kept Tails moving forward. After a minute passed, and after the music stopped, Tails was running up a hill, and then he stopped. It wasn't until I saw why. Sonic was there on the other side of the screen with his back to Tails, and his eyes closed. Tails looked happy to see Sonic, but then his smile faltered, obviously knowing that Sonic wasn't responding to him, as if not acting as if he was totally oblivious to Tails' presence. Tails slowly walked towards Sonic, and then I noticed I wasn't even moving my keyboard to make him move, so this must have been a cutscene. I suddenly began to have this growing feeling of dread as Tails walked closer and closer to Sonic to get his attention. I felt that Tails was in imminent danger, and something bad was about to happen. I heard faint static grow louder, but Tails was but inches away from Sonic and stopped and stuck his hand out to touch him. That foreboding feeling in my gut was growing stronger. I felt the urge to tell Tails to get the hell away from Sonic as the static grew. Suddenly, in a split second, I saw Sonic's eyes open. They were black with those red glowing dots, just like that title image. But there wasn't a smile. What then happened was the screen turned to black and the static cut off. It stayed there for about 7 seconds, and then white text appeared, forming a message.
Hello? Do you want to play with me?
At this point, I was creeped out, but I didn't want to continue the game. My curiosity got the better of me, so I was taken to a different level, with the level title now saying, Hide and Seek. This time I was in the Angel Island level from Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and it looked like everything was on fire. Tails looked as though he was scared out of his mind. He actually looked at me, made frantic gestures to me as if he wanted to get the hell out of the area as fast as possible. And I was starting to get freaked out by this. I mean, Tails was breaking the fourth wall, trying to tell me to get him out of there. So I pressed down on the arrow key as hard as I could, and made him run as fast as he could. A pixelated version of that creepy theme when you meet Shadow on the Ark as Robotnik from Sonic Adventure 2 was playing, as I made Tails trek through the desolate forest, trying to help him escape from whatever he was trying to run from. Suddenly, I heard that laugh again. That awful Kafeka laugh. Right after 10 seconds as I helped Tails run through the forest, I then started seeing flashes of Sonic pop up everywhere on the screen, again with those black and red eyes. The music changed to that suspenseful drowning jingle as I saw Sonic fly behind Tails, slowly gaining up on him, flying. This wasn't Sonic running, he was actually flying. The flying pose his sprite was making looked very similar to Metal Sonic's flying pose in Sonic CD, except this was just Sonic, and he had those black and red eyes again. Only this time, he had the most deranged-looking grin on his face. He looked as if he was enjoying the torment he was giving the poor little Kitsune as he gained up on him. Suddenly, Tails tripped. This was another cutscene. The music stopped, and Sonic was gone. Tails laid there and started crying for 15 seconds. The scene was rather upsetting to watch, and I kind of teared up myself. But then Sonic appeared right in front of Tails, and Tails looked up in horror. Blood started to come down those blackened eyes of Sonic as a grin slowly grew from his face as he looked down on the horrified fox. I could do nothing but watch. Just in a split second, Sonic lunged at Tails, and right before the screen went black, there was a loud screeching noise, a scream that lasted only 5 seconds. The text returned, and only this time it said,
"You're too slow. Do you want to try again?"
And then that god-awful laugh came with it. I was so shocked by what had happened. Did Sonic just kill Tails? No, he couldn't have. He and Tails are supposed to be best buds, right? Why would Sonic do that to him? I shook off the fear as I was brought back to the character select. The save file that had Tails was different. Tails wasn't in the box itself, but the TV screen, which was flickering with that red static. Tails' expression scared me. His eyes were black and bleeding. His orange fur had turned black, and he had an expression of anguish on his face. Trying to ignore it, I picked Knuckles next. The laugh came again, and the screen cut to black, and it stayed there for another 10 seconds. This time, the level said, "You can't run." I was freaked out by now. I couldn't tell if this was a glitch, a hack, or some kind of twisted joke. Or anything, really. But despite my fear of what happened next, I kept playing. The level looked much different. It had the scrap brain zone, but the sky and the background looked like the menu. It had that dark reddish cloudy sky, but the music was what creeped me out the most. It sounded like Geiger's theme right after you beat Pokey in Earthbound. I also noticed that Knuckles looked just as afraid as Tails did, though not as much. Rather, he looked a little nerved, and broke the fourth wall just like Tails did, as if he wasn't sure about what was going on. But I made him move anyway. He ran down a straight pathway on this dark level, and as he did, the screen started to flicker red static a couple times, and that maddening laugh came back again. Then after a few seconds of running, I noticed several bloodstains on the metallic ground. I felt a growing sense of fear, thinking that something horrible was going to happen to Knuckles. He looked nauseated, walking down this blood-stained road. But still, I kept on going. Suddenly, as Knuckles ran, Sonic appeared right in front of him with those black and red eyes, and then that red static appeared again. When the static vanished, showing nothing but a black screen with text saying,
"Found you."
I was now scared. Sonic found Knuckles already? What the hell was going on? Anyway, that red static came again, and I was back to the level. Knuckles looked like he was panicking, and Sonic was nowhere to be found. And this time, that high-pitched squealing from the Silent Hill 1's final boss was playing. Was this some kind of boss battle with Sonic? I hope to God it wasn't, honestly. Suddenly, Sonic appeared right behind Knuckles in what appeared to be pixelated black smoke. I made Knuckles turn and punch Sonic, but he vanished in his black pixelated cloud before I could even land a hit, and that terrible laugh went off again. Then Sonic appeared behind him again, and then I made Knuckles punch him again. Then Sonic vanished again, laughing. Knuckles was panicking even more, and I felt like I was going crazy. Sonic was practically playing with us. He was playing a sick, twisted little mind game with us. Me and Knuckles. Another cutscene played as Knuckles fell to his knees, clutching his head, sobbing. I felt his agony. Sonic was driving us both crazy. And then in a split second, Sonic lunged at Knuckles, and the screen went black with another distorted screaming that lasted for 3 seconds this time. Another text appeared.
So many souls to play with, yet such little time. Wouldn't you agree?
What the hell is going on? I started to think Sonic was actually trying to talk to me through the game, but I was too scared to think that. I was brought back to the main menu, and this time the second file box had Knuckles in the TV screen. His red fur had darkened to a reddish gray, his dreadlocks were dripping with blood, and his eyes were black and bleeding too. He had a look of sadness on his face. I began to think that those were the actual characters trapped in those TV screens and the save files, but I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. So I shut off the game, and I took a break. Took a little nap. Wish I hadn't. Because there I began to have the most disturbing nightmare. I was in a pitch black, dark area. Though I was given light from a lamp that hung over my head. I could hear the cries of Tails and Knuckles nearby. They were saying stuff like, "Help us," and "Why did you give us to him?" and "Run away before he gets you too." Their cries died out, as then I heard Sonic laugh. His laugh sounded a lot like the distorted Kefka laugh, though without the bit crusher.
You were fun to play with, much like your friend Kyle. Though he didn't last long.
I was scared and looking around for the source of the voice.
It won't be long now before you join me like all the rest.
I then saw him walking towards me, flickering in and out in several directions. When he grabbed me, I saw his black, bleeding, red-eyed, grinning face, and I woke up with fright. After a couple of hours, I decided to continue playing the game. I didn't know why, but I just had to know. I had to figure out why this was happening. So I turned on the computer, turned on the game, and then I selected Dr. Robotnik next. I still thought that was wacky, playing as Robotnik. But anyway, the level title appeared again. And this time it said nothing. Just an ellipsis, which I found really freaky. This time I was in some kind of hallway. Didn't really look like it was from any of the classic Sonic games, though it had a pixelated style. The floor was shiny and checkered. The walls were a dark grayish purple with animated candlelights and a few bloodstains here and there. It looked like the Marble Zone from Sonic 1 after you beat Green Hill Zone. There were a few dark bloodstains here and there, but there was a dark red curtain hanging above the top part of the screen. Every 12 seconds or so, that red curtain will sway very slowly, but whenever you're playing the game, you can barely see it move. The music was oddly pleasant. A piano playing a rather sad yet peaceful song, but I knew better. This was the song that played in Hill Act 1, only it wasn't in reverse. Robotnik didn't look entirely nervous, as Tails and Knuckles did, but he did have a suspicious look on his face, as if he was just a bit paranoid. He did a little idle animation while I left him standing. He turned his head to the left, and then to the right at least twice, and shrugged at me as if he had no idea what's going on. Even though I was scared out of my mind about what was going to happen, I had Robotnik continue onward. He did his usual goofy running animation. You know, when you've beaten him at the end of a classic Sonic game, and you chase him. As we continued going down the hallway. Then I stopped at a long flight of stairs. Now I was nervous. Even Robotnik was unsure of himself, though I pressed onward. As I led Robotnik down the stairs, I noticed that the walls had gotten a lot more darker, a lot more reddish. The red torches were now an eerie blue. When we landed on another hallway, this one was longer than the last one, or at least it felt like it. we headed down another flight of stairs. This one was much longer and took at least 1 full minute. And then I heard that horrid Kefka laugh again. And then the music slowly faded until it was quiet. As it did, the walls turned more black, more dark red, and the torches were black. When Robotnik landed on the third hallway, I noticed he was really creeped out, though he tried to hide it like he always does. I couldn't blame him. I was scared too. Suddenly Sonic popped out right in front of Robotnik, the same way he did Knuckles, and then red static. The red static lasted for about 15 seconds, and then it showed me the most unpleasant image. The image showed an image of Sonic standing in the darkness where you can only see his face, while his head and torso faded into the background. He looked so real that you could see the lines in his blue fur, as if you could actually feel the fur if you touched the screen. And his face, oh God, his face. He had the most horrifying smile I've ever seen. And that's saying something considering I saw that at the start of the game. His eyes were wide and black. And once again, crying blood. There were those 2 small red dots and those glowing black eyes staring right at me. As if staring into my mind. His grin was wide and demonic. It literally stretched to the sides of his face like a Cheshire cat, except Sonic had fangs. Very sharp fangs, much like the werewolf's teeth, except more vicious and somewhat yellow-looking from the look of it. He had stains of blood and small bits of flesh on his lips and fangs where he ate some animal. I stared at that gruesome image for 30 seconds, never taking my eyes off of it, as if he was actually looking at me, smiling at me. That face. It took about 10 seconds for it to etch itself into my brain for good. Then the screen flickered with red static 3 times, and on the 3rd time I heard the Kefka laugh, except this time it sounded more distorted, demonic even. It went back to the image again, except this time there was text, although it was messed up. But it was pretty much one of the most horrifying things I looked at since I had this game.
I am God.
When I read that message while looking at Sonic, it hit me. I realized right there and then this Sonic was a monster, a pure, evil, sadistic, all-powerful, nightmarish, demented monster. And that all of his victims, Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik, and maybe Kyle, were just his little toys. And the game is the very gateway into this chaotic, nightmarish world. And the very hell his victims are trapped in. Suddenly, in an actual split second, I screamed as Sonic lunged at the screen, screeching loudly, his mouth wide open to an unnatural length, revealing nothing but a spiraling abyss of pure darkness before the static came again. This time, it was much more louder and distorted, so loud it hurt my ears. I grabbed my ears as the red static went on for about 7 seconds. Then it stopped, showing nothing but a black screen. As I sat there staring at the screen, one last text came up.
Are you ready for round 2, Tom?
Then that Kefka laugh. As it was now sounding clearer, as if Sonic was right behind me. Played again 3 times, and I looked at that text in shock and confusion. and I got booted back to the main menu. This time, a third save file had a TV image of Robotnik, in the same tormented style as Tails and Knuckles. Robotnik's skin turned a dull gray, his mustache had drooped and blackened. His glasses broke and blood is coming from them, and he had a near dead-like expression on his face. I looked at Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik, and I cried a bit. I pitied them for the agony they were going through. Forever trapped within this game, forever tormented by that horrid hedgehog, and will always be. Then the computer shut itself off. I couldn't turn it back on, no matter what I did. I sat there, maybe for 25 seconds, horrified by what has just happened. Sonic is the very embodiment of evil. He tortures people who plays his game in more ways than one. And when he gets bored, he drags you into the game, literally drags you to hell, where he can play with you always, as his toy. I can't get the game out of my computer. I think it's stuck in there, but at least I've turned it back on now. I sat there for about 25 seconds. Then I heard a voice right behind me, like a whisper.
Keep this interesting for me.
I turned around to see where the voice was coming from. And what I saw made me scream. Sitting on my bed, staring right at me, was a Sonic the Hedgehog plushie, smiling, with blood stains under his eyes.
There is nothing here that's dear to me. All of you are just my toys.